We ready?
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Grandma. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Oh!
The one about the pigs is the boys were always wanting to make root beer. And so Mom told them how to do it, and so they got their pans and everything out, and they made this root beer. And then they had to bottle it up into bottles and put lids on them. And then they have to put it out in a haystack to let it ripen. But they ferment. But they forgot about it and left it there too long, and when they went to get it, it had fermented.
It was like years later.
No, just a couple of weeks.
Months, so.
A couple of weeks later. And so they thought, what can we do with this? We can't drink this, it's fermented. And so one of the boys had a bright idea to give it to the pigs. And Grandpa had a bunch of pigs down there, and so they dumped that root beer into the pig trough. And the pigs, they drank that, thought that was great stuff, but then it made them sick, or maybe made them drunk. And there those pigs would fall down and squeal and shake their legs, and the kids were just having a great time watching those pigs until Grandpa came along and saw what had happened, and was he ever mad.
So the pigs were drunk, so it turned into beer?
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of like
it's
beer.
Don't get any ideas.
Yeah, it turned into like beer, and so it made the pigs drunk. So that was a pig story. And then the story about Grandpa sent the boys had one horse, and they had to drive the cows down to the river to get a drink of water. And I wanted to go with them, but they said, no, there's not room on the horse for you. There was already 2 boys on the horse, and they weren't going to let me get on with them. So I said, well, I want to go with you. And they said, well, you can come, but you have to follow behind. I didn't have any shoes on, and I thought, well, that's okay, I can run. So I started running behind the horse, and it was during the hot summer, and when I got tired of running, I thought, well, I'll sit down, because my feet were getting hot and they were burning from the sand. And I sat down, but I forgot I had a big hole in the seat of my pants, and it sort of burned my bottom, so I'd run a while, and then I'd burn my feet, and then I'd sit down, and I'd burn my bottom, and then I kept changing back and forth like that. And I kept begging the boys to let me ride the horse, but they didn't do it. So that was the experience of that.
I would like to hear a little bit more tell about when you met Daddy Brown, and a little bit about your courtship, and then tell about when you first met Papa, because I know you met him way back when. Didn't he move in your town and work there or something?
Yeah.
You met him then or something?
Yeah, that's, when I,
Whichever one came first.
yeah, I met, well, I guess first of all, I was working there in Pima at the REA office, and Norman Crawford came in and applied for electricity. And boy, all of us girls in the office thought he was the cutest thing, until we noticed he had a ring on his finger. Yeah. So that was my first time I had ever seen him. And then, years later, he came into my life again. But with Daddy Brown, I met him on a blind date in Mesa. And one of my girlfriends had a date with a boyfriend, and she says, well, I have 3 girlfriends here from Safford, and he says, well, I happen to have 3 boyfriends, so why don't we mix them up? And so we did. We all got together, and they just said, well, climb in the car. So I climbed in the car, and I happened to be climbing the car by Reed Scott Brown. And that's how I first met him. And then we started dating, and he was lots of fun. He was a good, clean guy, and it wasn't love at first sight, but the more I went with him, the more I liked him, and we had a lot of fun together, and we dated for 2 years. And then we bought this Reed bought this house in Chandler, and I was looking up the other day, and we paid $13,000 for a 3-bedroom home. And plus 3.5 acres, yeah. And so it had to be painted, and so on the weekends, Reed moved into the house, and on the weekends I'd come over and we'd help paint. I'd help paint, and we'd get it ready for when we got married. We got married on October the 6th.
And what year?
Of 1950. And then we had Scott in 1952, December. And then Carol in May 1954. And Rod in May 1956. And then we had Reed in September 1958. And then in October 1958, Reed had been real sick all summer, and they did an exploratory operation and found that he was full of cancer, so they just sewed him back up. And he lived until December the 24th, 1958, when he passed away. And at the time I thought my world had come to an end, but because of the 4 lovely children, I knew I had to go on and do my best with the children. And we were by ourselves for 6 years.
6 years.
And then, in that time, Norman Crawford had lost his wife, and he was by himself, and he had 6 children. And so we started dating, and then he,
Went pretty fast, I remember.
yeah, it did, went fast. He wrote to dear Abby and said,
Oh, you did?
he wrote to dear Abby, and he told her our situation, and he got a letter back, and she says, go slow.
Dear
Abby, like a.
I can remember Dad coming over and he'd bring a gift every time he came.
Oh.
Do you remember that? He
No.
got an alarm clock one time.
Dad, did you get a gift?
I don't remember. Do you remember
No,
that?
just
You used to
grandma.
it seemed like you used to bring a gift every time you came. I thought, wow.
That's nice.
What kind of a guy is he?
And how long did you date before you were married?
Dusty,
Oh, what, 3 months?
Wasn't Dusty?
Oh my, 3 months.
I remember coming over to go on a date, and you're gonna leave Max at our house, and I think maybe one of your older daughters was
Babysitting.
babysitting, and you had that old Volkswagen, and Max snuck out and climbed in the back section of that little Volkswagen and hid out. So about 10 minutes after you left, you came back and got Max back.
So then in October, we got married in 1964 and joined the 2 families. By then he had 5.
Judy had
5, yeah, Judy died October the 3rd, 1964, just before we got married. And so then we got married and lived happy ever after.